Good evening, everyone. I'm Casey Sword, Executive Director here at the Cabot, and I just want to thank you all for coming out to our first community conversations of 2024. Thanks so much for being here. We have a really great program for you tonight, and I just wanted to know, any of you been to community conversations in the past? Could I just see some hands? Anybody been to this program? That's quite a few of you, and there's quite a few who have not been here before, but this is a monthly series. We tackle all kinds of topics here. Our next community conversations is going to be in February, and we're partnering with Green Beverly, which, if you don't know Green Beverly, they're a wonderful organization based, guess where? In Beverly. And we've partnered with them on sustainability. They've given us lots of great advice. When the Cabot was going through one of our greening plans to get rid of plastic bottle waste and other initiatives, they were super helpful to us, and they're helping lots of people in the community become more sustainable and to help our environment. So we're really excited to partner with Green Beverly. And just stay in touch with our website. We have lots of great things coming up this year and things planned. I also wanted to draw attention to another great community event we have in a couple of weeks. We have our second annual Amplifying Voices Film Festival, which is an amazing event that we partner with several community partners. We partner with the city, we partner with Salem State and Endicott, Montserrat College of Art to present this festival. It's sponsored by Cell Signaling Technology, and it's about lifting up voices that are not traditionally heard or seen in film. We have a really great program for you, so we hope you'll join us. That's the first weekend in February. And we hope that it's not minus 40 degrees like it was last year for Amplifying Voices, but it's nice and warm in the theater now, thanks to the support of our community. So for tonight, once again, we're partnering with Leading Ladies. Affordable housing is a really serious issue in our community, and there's lots of new information to share, which I think this event is very timely tonight. We have a great group of panelists. So I want to now introduce you all to Therese Meldon. She's our partner from Leading Ladies, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about tonight's program. Please give a warm Cabot welcome for Therese Meldon.
Thank you, Casey, and thank you to the Cabot for partnering with us. Leading Ladies is a civic organization based here on the North Shore. We care about the issues faced by women and families, and we strongly encourage everyone to vote. You can find information about us in the lobby and on the platform in the back about the organizations represented here by the panelists. The QR code will take you to links to all the organizations here tonight. We are very lucky to have Mayor Michael Cahill with us this evening by video. He's been mayor of the city of Beverly since 2014 and strongly supports affordable housing. Let's watch the film.
Happy Wednesday evening, everybody. Sorry I can't be there with you. I'm at a conference this week. I will definitely be attending some workshops on affordable housing at the conference I'm at. I hope you have a really robust, wonderful, helpful conversation tonight. Thank you to the Leading Ladies and all the great work you do around these community conversations. Thanks to the panelists who are with you tonight. In the city of Beverly, we've done some fantastic work over the last decade plus, and that's only because we have great partners and a lot of folks who are really committed in Beverly to making sure that people who find Beverly, people who choose to make a home and a life in Beverly have opportunities to do so. It's something I think that we've long prided ourselves on, and it's getting harder and harder to ensure. As a city government, we have worked with our partners in the community and my colleagues in local government on our city council, and we really have worked hard to try to make sure that, you know, whether you be a senior looking to downsize and stay in Beverly, or a senior who have family in Beverly and are trying to come and get closer to family, whether you're a working family, whether you're somebody who's struggling to make ends meet, an individual in need of housing with supportive services. We've really tried hard to make sure that everybody in this community has an ability to stay, if you're already here, and create opportunities as well for people to find Beverly and call us home. So we have intentionally worked with our partners and created additional housing at the Y downtown, in the Anchor Point neighborhood just uphill from the high school, in the ongoing rehab of the old Briscoe School to deeply affordable senior housing. And we're encouraged and excited that there's so many people in Beverly who are as committed and as determined to make sure that we can long be a home for everybody who chooses to be here. So I'm excited for tonight's conversation. I look forward to hearing about it when I get back from my conference, and have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much.
Okay, we're going to start with Andrew DeFranza. He is the executive director of Harbor Light Homes, and he is our moderator this evening. Please welcome Andrew.
Thank you for that tepid response. Delightful. It's a little more appropriate. Bob Stoneham, I hear you back there. I know you're gimpy in the arm, so just be careful. It's lovely to see everybody here at the wonderful Cabot. We're big fans. To the guy here with the camera, I'm sorry, I thought you were Dustin Luca, which is why I grabbed you on the arm on the way in the door, but I'm Andrew. We haven't met each other, so I won't do that again. But very, very happy to be here with you all to discuss this topic. I've had the pleasure of being here a couple times on this stage. The most memorable time was for a little comedy show, which we are not doing tonight for any of you who remember that, though I do believe it is memorialized on YouTube if anybody wants to see the scariest 9 minutes of my life. It was right there a world ago. Bethany, it's on YouTube, yeah? I think it is. Yeah, unfortunately. I thought some of the jokes were pretty good myself, but anyway, so I want to introduce our panel this evening. We have some excellent folks with us tonight. We're going to go through some questions for them and then some feedback for you to get some questions for you. So I'd like to introduce Sean Farrell, who is the chair of the Selectmen in Hamilton and an all-around great human. Sean, come on out. My longtime friend and colleague, Megan O'Neill, who is the executive director of Essex County Habitat for Humanity. Delighted to see her. And a friend and colleague, Darlene Wynn, who is the planner for the city of Beverly. She's the brains here. If you guys want to take a seat. I guess I'm going to stay here. Is that all right? The fourth chair is for whatever reason. So a couple of questions. I can if you want me to. You like me to? All right, I'm taking the water. You go that way, I'll go this way. Go ahead. I'm not very tall, as everybody knows. So, also, for those of you who are curious, my wife and I are about to have a baby. So thank you. So if my phone rings and I go into labor, Deanna Fay, my friend Deanna right here, is going to moderate. She said she would in the beginning. So if that happens, that's where I'm going. That's a true thing. I'm not making that up. So a couple of things. One, I'm going to take the first one, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some different questions, and we'll roll through this group. For some of you, maybe old hands at this material. For some of you, it may be a little new. And so one of the dominant questions is, what is affordable housing? So I'm going to give you sort of a twofold answer, and then we'll see what the rest of the committee here has to say. There are really two ways to think about what is affordable housing, and two reasons the question is asked. The first one is it's affordable housing can be defined as something that would qualify for compliance by the state, that would give a municipality credit for what they need to have as affordable housing in their city or town. So some people are interested in compliance, and there's a definition associated with that and income levels, and it might be affordable for the state's compliance purposes, but it might not feel affordable to anybody that you know. So the second one is really, is it affordable to people who are working different kinds of jobs, entry-level jobs, service jobs, essential worker jobs, to seniors, to folks with disabilities? Is it affordable to them? Meaning, are they paying not more, or roughly not more than 30% of their income? And do they experience it as a rent that they can't afford and still pay the rest of their bills and live? And those are generally the two ways to think about it, but I'm curious if anybody here has any other commentary on how to define affordable housing. Feel free.
I think you nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great, Megan. I appreciate that. I owe you one. All right, we'll just go with that. So while Megan is quick for the affirmation, which I appreciate, I'm wondering if you can help us with this next question then. What are the examples of, or what are some examples of different types of affordable housing. You guys do a particular type better than anybody, and I'm wondering if you could relay for the crowd what are some of the types.
Sure. So I'll first talk about the type that we do. So Habitat for Humanity builds owner-occupied affordable housing. So we build housing that is particular for home ownership. But there's also, I think when people think about affordable housing, a lot of the time what they're thinking about is rental housing, which can be really important housing as well. There's also family housing. There can be all different types of housing, which is important because there's all different types of situations that people may need housing in. So
that's great. Thank you, Ming. Appreciate it. Darlene, I wonder if you can help us with this next one here. You just helped us close a deal in Beverly. So if you could describe a little bit for our folks here today, who pays for affordable housing? How does it get paid for?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, so there are various and numerous, as I'm learning, as I work with Andrew and his team on closing projects, numerous pools of funding. A lot of the funding is coming from federal government or the state government through incentive programs and grants and loans. We also, as a city, provide funding through the Community Preservation Act and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then through the federal government through what's called the HOME program. So there's various venues for the city to put money in. I would argue the developers themselves pay for affordable housing in the creation of it, and at times, whether it's market rate or affordable housing, sometimes that cost of the affordable units are passed through, in some cases, to the other tenants who partially subsidize that affordable housing. So various and many pools of housing. It depends on how the deal is, funding into housing, depending on how the deal is structured. But it can't be done without any or most of those other pools of funding.
Yeah, that's a great description. And for folks who might be curious about it at a sort of slightly granular level, a good way to think about it in the rental side, as Megan referenced earlier, is about 60 cents of every dollar is a federal tax credit that gets sold and turned into capital for these deals. And about 20 cents, 25 cents on every dollar is this sort of grants and subordinate debt that comes from the city and the region and the state. And then the balance of it is generally bank debt from excellent supportive banks like IFS. I saw Tim Burrell. Tim, are you here? Where's Tim? There may be other banks. I saw Tim in here earlier. There he is. You could ask Tim with the vest, handsome guy that he is, about that. And the banks are usually the rest. So if you're wondering about it for rental, that's about 10 or 12 different funders. The Briscoe School, for the Beverly folks, that's about 11 or 12 different sources. But it usually comes in those chunks. There is at least one state housing official in the room. I won't point her out. If you have more questions, though, I could maybe introduce you later. Megan, could you clarify for us a little bit what the difference is for the ownership model and the rental model?
yeah. So in the ownership model, the cost to build a home is about $350,000 to $400,000. And when the family purchases the home, they're purchasing that home for about $200,000. So when you think about that, it's sort of a funny business model. We sell every home for less than it costs us to build them. There's not a lot of folks that could stay in business with that business model. So Habitat really relies on a number of sources of funds. We also rely on some state and federal funding to help, some affordable housing trust funds in each community. And then the sale of the homes, and then charitable contributions. So a big source of funding for us is donors, so individuals who choose to contribute to support the work that we're doing.
So if you're curious about more gritty details when we get to the question time, we can take some of those, but that's sort of a rough sketch of it. As Darlene mentioned, to be distinguished earlier, if there's a unit in a regular market development, maybe through inclusionary zoning, I know there's some housing wonky people in the room, that's generally getting subsidized, cross-subsidized by the developer on the income of the total project. So there's a few different ways to do it, and this will give you a sense of it. So please feel free to write down for yourself any questions you have, and we'll try to answer those a little later. Sean, question for you. Do you have a sense about can you describe who the different kinds of affordable housing or any affordable housing serves? Is it only people with like really, really, really low incomes, people maybe who are not working or otherwise?
I think that's a great question, Andrew. It's all, I guess, all different walks of life. In Hamilton, in many communities, affordable is seen as 80% AMI, the annual median income. And in different communities, that's a different number. But folks like myself, I'm a public school teacher along with the selectmen, and I would qualify for this housing. Your local nurses, firefighters, police, etc., folks from every kind of walk of life that meets that 80% AMI, or depending on the housing, could be 30% depending on how it's set up. So many people do qualify for it, and many people should try if they have the chance. Many people want to live in their communities if they're working in their communities, police and fire, teachers, etc. And I think that's a very valuable thing to have. Local people working in your local community tend to be more vested in the community themselves. So it's a positive thing to have those people in the community and not have to commute from other places where they're renting and they can own, or as said previously, it can also be a rental unit. Within Hamilton, we just finished a project on Willow Street, which is 18 units. Half of them are market rate, half of them are rental. And the good thing about that is that the rental units are our affordable units, and thus the whole development of the 18 units counts towards our SHI, which is our subsidized housing index, our inventory. And that helps communities meet that criteria, as Andrew mentioned earlier, for that 10%. There's not too many communities in the state of Massachusetts that meet that SHI. I think Hamilton, we've gone up a little bit. We've been really pushing 40B and affordable projects over the last handful of years that I've been involved. And I think we're about 5.9%, whereas I think 10 years ago when I got on the select board, we were at about 3.8%. So we've made some progress in fits and spurts.
So on the terms, thank you, Sean. On the terms, as it helps for folks, Sean's referencing 40B, which is a state law that gets used in different ways, and the subsidized housing inventory. So when we mentioned it earlier, there are different kinds of affordable housing. For the state's purposes, if it's about 40B, you have to have 10% of your housing stock set aside for people that are earning less than 80% of the median income, which for a household of four in this immediate area is about $90,000 at the moment, a lot of money. And so you can be below that, but you can't be above it, and then that would mean that municipality gets credit for that unit. Now the rents, though, are tagged to that floating income number, and that income number is updated every year, and it's updated by HUD at the federal level. But it is geographically bound, right? So a lot of times you'll hear people are upset, especially in our region, because those income levels in our region include Cambridge all the way up to Gloucester and some west. And so it's really a wide variety of communities. So you have Boxford in the same district as Lynn. And so the incomes wildly vary. But in a particular community, they have to deal with whatever the median is for the whole region. So it does get a little funky. Inside of that, you can make it more affordable than that, but that will get you credit on the subsidized housing inventory, which I'm hopeful that's all as clear as mud. Short version is lots of different people who do lots of different kind of jobs qualify and live in affordable housing. People can rent that affordable housing. They can buy that affordable housing. Lots of seniors who have built up communities and retire live in affordable housing. Folks with disabilities and various challenges. So it's a wide range. Think about it like an income tier, and all different kinds of folks, especially now when the market rate is so expensive, are living in affordable housing. Okay, so on that point, Megan, I wonder if you could describe for us a little bit why then, if we have affordable housing, why do people who are employed and have jobs then need affordable housing? I think the premise there is if you were working, you wouldn't need affordable housing.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll bury or steal the lead a little bit. That's obviously not true. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So as Sean was saying, you know, the income ranges. So for a family of 4, you'd be talking about an income range of $40,000 to $90,000 for that would qualify, for example, for a Habitat house. That's an income range in the 40 to 60% area median income, and so the folks in that income range, by and large, are working. They're the folks that are buying Habitat houses, as an example, are working as school nurses, are working as MRI technicians, are working in lots of jobs, and are working as municipal employees within the city of Beverly, are working in lots of jobs that we need done in our communities. And they couldn't begin to afford market rate houses in our communities today. And if you look at the way that housing prices have changed in our communities and what people could afford 30 years ago today, actually, I don't know if anybody saw this headline, just came out in the past day or two. Essex County made the top 10 in the country for least affordable house prices in the country. That's not a top 10 list that we want to be on. We just made top 10 in the country for that. So yeah, folks that are working today cannot afford the price of our housing. The least expensive apartment for rent in Ipswich right now is $1,600 a month. How do folks begin to afford market rate rents? That's for a studio apartment in Ipswich right now. So folks that are working, have full-time jobs, sometimes even 2 full-time jobs, can't afford market rate rents with what they're at today. And part of that is, well, I'll stop. Just there's the shortage of housing, the number of homes. We haven't produced enough homes for the number of people that are living in our communities. As we've seen, a lot of as people have aged in place, so we've had a lot of families where you now had kids grow up and move away, and so now you've got an older 1 person or 2 people living in the house that once grew up a family, and so you've got a 70-year-old or 75-year-old or 80-year-old occupying a house that once housed 5 people, which is lovely. That person is still healthy and wants to stay in that house, but instead of housing 5 people in that house, there's now 1 person in that house. And we haven't built more housing to house the family of 5 that wants to live in this community. We haven't been building homes over the past 30 years at the rate that we built houses over the previous 30 years. So we have created this tremendous shortage of housing, and that has driven up prices incredibly in our communities. And so we see this point where folks with good paying jobs in our communities can't afford market rate rents, and they can't afford to buy a house. So, sorry.
That was
Well
great.
said.
Soapbox.
That was great. I think, Darlene, I see you have data, so I love that. So why don't you tell me about the data?
Tried to pull some data. So it's a little bit old, but I was looking at trying to figure out that question, why do people who work have to, or really to put some numbers on, why do people who have work need affordable housing? So if this was a household median income of, say, $85,000, and if the homeowner earns that $85,000, we would want them to pay no more than 30%, as Andrew described, of their income on housing, with an average rent of $2,600. In 2003, we were looking at that number, I think. Actually, sorry, no, I did this actually based on an average rent of $2,100, so it's a couple years old, per month. That leaves them with a gap of about $500 to $600 a month that they cannot pay for market rent housing. So that specifically, that number is what is the reason why people who work and have, this could be a single household who earns $85,000 or a 2-person household who earns $85,000 a year, but they can't make it work.
So it's a math problem. I think that it's important for folks to recognize, and this is sort of an interim anecdote here. We're leasing up the building in Wenham called Maple Woods. It's a senior building. Some of you may have seen that. It's under construction right now, Maple Street in Wenham, just on the Danvers line. And we had an elderly couple who lives in Beverly currently in a rental unit, and their rent went up from $2,300 to $2,600 right at the same time that the husband retired. So their income went down and their rent went up, and they couldn't afford it. And they ended up going month to month. So follow the math here. It went from 23 to 26, and they couldn't afford the 26, right, anymore, which is almost exactly like your numbers. And they went then from a yearly lease to a monthly lease. I'm actually not sure this is legal. This is something I want to explore. So Libby, you can remind me of this later. But so the for-profit company charged them another $300 a month to go month to month on the lease instead of going annual, which probably was buried deep in the lease somewhere that they hit a trigger. So it went from 23 to 26, and then from 26 to 29. And then, of course, they got behind. And so then there was a $200 a month late fee. So essentially their monthly carry went from $2,300 to $3,100, and they couldn't endure it. And so we're trying to get them into a different building. But that'll give you a sense of how quickly in the sequence that could happen. And it just happened to be the timing of he retired, was not able to keep working anymore, and they raised the rent. So I'm wondering, Darlene, on that same math, if you could comment a little more about seniors, particularly because Beverly's in the middle of the Briscoe project that we're helping out with, and there's some other things going on, but a little bit about how does it work for seniors that are in retirement, either on Social Security or some kind of pension? What are we seeing for that, especially at City Hall in terms of requests?
Sure. So, I mean, I would point out, as Andrew mentioned, one of the challenges with seniors, and as people age, they're retiring, their incomes are fixed. There's limited opportunity to grow income beyond what you already get. Hopefully they have retirement and money set aside, but many do not. And so they're on fixed incomes, and they need to work within a budget and don't have a lot of flexibility. We don't quantify the calls that we get. Certainly we get calls across the board in terms of people who are looking for housing or struggling with housing. I would point out that from a data perspective, so the population over 65 is, as people can expect, growing significantly, and estimated that by 2030 that will represent 25% of the city of Beverly's population will be age 65 and over. I think we're probably getting close to that number already. And so it's a significant amount of population. People are living longer, they need more housing for longer, they want to stay in their homes, like Megan mentioned, and maybe we've got other solutions that we can talk about later for how to help them do that. And it may not be feasible for them to downsize and afford a condo. They're looking for a rental option or staying in their homes for the most part, because condo prices are also pretty significant, and taking that investment on at a later age is not desirable for many. I had another point I was going to make that I might remember later, but yeah.
Sean, are you seeing anything else or hearing anything else in Hamilton on that front around seniors? I know I've been in some meetings in Hamilton where that question comes up.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking when she was talking there. Hamilton, as she mentioned, in many communities in Massachusetts, we're aging. And people are staying in their homes, but taxes are still going up on these fixed incomes. So there's kind of a catch-22. Many seniors can't afford to pay the taxes and stay in their home, but they can't afford to move somewhere and pay the rent that is equal or more than their mortgage. So we're having this housing crisis in Massachusetts and around the United States, really. And within Hamilton, when we have affordable housing come to us, or we're thinking about it, we're thinking about the multiple family housing and families, but we're also thinking about the senior housing, which is kind of the bulk of our population at the moment. So whenever a project comes to us, we're really trying to push that senior housing aspect. So people who are in town and they can't age in place, they can age in the community still and move into that affordable housing. And there's kind of a give and take with developers that come in that try to do 40B or other affordable units. with the AMI, et cetera, and the state would much rather have family housing. They used to be able to kind of say the senior housing was okay, but they've given a little pushback over the years. But as local communities like ours, we still really push for that senior housing because we know there's a lot of community members that want to stay in place, or at least stay in the community, not in their own home because they can't afford it. So as an advocate, I'm still pushing for family housing, but I'm doubly pushing for senior housing, for our seniors to be able to stay in their communities.
Thank you. Yeah, you certainly did see a lot of this, I will say, during COVID, how seniors fared throughout COVID in more dense nursing settings versus affordable senior housing. The data was wildly swung in favor of the housing quality of life and their health outcomes. So that is affecting a little bit some of the public policy. Although at a federal level, the ways that we were creating affordable senior housing for those who are in the area like Turtle Creek or Turtle Woods or Central Grammar or these other places, a lot of the ways that was created are not, you can't do that anymore. So we could talk about that if you like, but it's a challenge on, this is back to an earlier question about how it gets funded. That funding is not available anymore. So Sean, I'm going to stick with you and start on this one, and then we'll go down the line. Does affordable housing, either rental or ownership or any kind, affect property values in a neighborhood positively, negatively, not at all? What's your assessment of that, and what are some of the things you might hear in your role as a selectman about that?
Short answer, no. A little bit longer description there. Many times with affordable housing, as many of us on the panel know and in the audience, there's a stigma to it. I've been to many 40B meetings for events in our community and others where people start talking about Section 8, drug use, special needs students, etc. And that's just not the case. The property value maintains, and I feel that I have a friend who's a realtor, and he always at our town meeting for years would stand up and kind of do a stump speech and talk about diversified housing stock. In many communities on the North Shore, we don't have much of a diversified housing stock, Hamilton in particular. Our tax base is all single-family homes, 97%. We don't have very many rental units. Our affordability, even what is, quote, affordable in Hamilton if you're into a starter home, is still probably $400,000 or $500,000, which isn't very affordable for many people. And what happens is we have people move into the community, they'll buy a lower priced home, they'll remodel it and maybe double it in size, and now it's a $700 million plus house, and we don't have any younger families or elderly folks or single moms and dads able to move into the community. So you kind of get this glut of really expensive homes, and you kind of get stale. And so having these projects in town diversifies your housing stock with rentals, smaller units, cottage housing, etc. They all create this more of a rotation of your housing stock, which enlivens the community and brings different people and different views in the town, as well as different economics in the town. Massachusetts and the United States has a real big history of exclusionary zoning. And exclusionary zoning, it's been going on since probably the early 1900s. There's a great person, I just listened to her lecture, Amy Dane is her name, and she just wrote a whole thing on it. There's a few other authors that she's pulled from. But it started back in Massachusetts communities for kind of stopping lower income people coming in and ruining the property values. And they weren't really ruining the property values, it was just kind of an elitist thing to do. And over the years, it's creating zoning that's thwarted mixed levels of housing. And that's why we're in the housing crisis we are today, basically.
That's a pretty good answer. Go ahead, Don.
Can I add to that? I guess similar vein, but just adding to that, I also would say no. But perhaps yes, in the sense that a lot of times when we are building affordable housing or creating or preserving affordable housing, whether it's new or renovation or rehab, we are actually improving properties, which are then improving the neighborhood, or taking a vacant lot and turning it into a family and a community of families, such as Anchor Point. and making it a better place for the people that already do live in the neighborhood just by improving, what they see day to day and the community and the sense of people that are around there.
That's great. Thank you for that
I
addition.
like the yes to yours. It increases property value.
And that, Sean referenced Amy Dain. It's D-A-I-N if people are curious about her. The other one you're probably going to want to check out if you're curious about that, especially segregation based on race, is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, which we would be happy to give you a copy of. I don't know that we brought any, Bethany, but happy to do that if people... What's that? You got them. Okay, apparently we do have them. Yeah, there you go. We'll get you. Megan, I wonder if you can add to that. I think a lot of people assume that when people are asking that question about property values, it's usually a defensive posture against rental housing. And there's an assumption about who will live in rental housing based on race and class. Harbor Light makes mostly rental housing, so I always assume if Habitat's going to do something, everyone will love it. It's like the greatest thing, and everybody loves Habitat. And so when people beat up on Habitat, I always think it's like taking a lollipop from a baby. So, but this did happen not too long ago in a community that shall remain nameless. Deanna Faye, was it Gloucester? It was Gloucester. Thank you. Yes, Ruth Pino and Deanna Faye. So maybe you could describe a little. It's not just rental. Some of the things that might have been said in that you don't really have to if you don't want to, but I wish you would to help that.
Yeah, I think I think there's a natural opposition to affordable housing once it has an address. So there's a saying in the affordable housing community that everybody supports affordable housing until it has an address. And once that address is next to you, that's when people get nervous about affordable housing. And so we hear a number of concerns about affordable housing. I won't talk about the Gloucester proposal, but a community that shall remain nameless where we proposed 4 homes. There were concerns about traffic. There were concerns about flooding. There were concerns about impact on the schools. There were concerns. 4 homes we were proposing. No, it was townhouses. But I think people get very nervous when affordable housing is proposed. I'm not sure where that comes from. I want to believe it comes from a good place, but sometimes it is hard to find the good place that might come from. So I'll leave that unsaid.
So it's interesting. I thought she was going to talk about the other one in Gloucester, not the recent one. Was that right? Yeah.
Oh.
So that's the one I was thinking of.
Further
no?
back.
Okay, never mind. We'll hold that one for later.
We'll hold that one.
I will say anecdotally, I did have we were working on a 20-acre piece of land in Hamilton for a while, a pretty long while, multiple years, went to a few hundred meetings. And the irony was the near abutter was opposed, so we brought him to a board meeting to try to come to some consensus about what he was concerned about. So we kept going through these iterations. All right, you don't want us to do 100, which, by the way, was 5 units an acre. You don't want us so we kept going down and down and down until we got to, how about just one house on this lot? And he said, no, that would not be acceptable. We thought, okay, well, this has nothing to do with housing then, does it? So that is a true story. So I guess related to that then, I'll start with Darlene on this time. Is Lorinda Viznik's not, I think the school committee has a meeting tonight. Is Lorinda here? Are you in that meeting right now? On an earbud? She is, yes. She's not. So my wife is in that meeting with Lorinda, who is in the back. So Lorinda, maybe you could answer this question or ask about it later. Does affordable housing affect the quality of schools in a neighborhood or a municipality? And what do you hear about that question, maybe related to the previous question?
Excuse me. I hear a lot of concern, maybe less now than I think a number of years ago, about schools and the generation of school children, primarily with single-family homes, but also, I would use as an example, I guess, my data point. There's been a lot of rental housing constructed in Beverly, particularly downtown. More mid-density apartment-style units. And there's been a question about the impact of those types of units on the school populations. Our data shows that approximately that type of housing generates 1 student for every 33 housing units. So it's not really about, and some of those units are affordable, but not all of them. Some of them are market rate. But it's not about the affordable housing piece of it necessarily. It's the type of housing which is what drives the number of children that are generated and added to a school system and the quality of the schools. I have heard nothing from our school department, and I don't have the data specifically that we can't accommodate it. We have particularly specifically looked at it when we passed the 40R district for Anchor Point and allowed the creation of 75 family units, encouraging students to live there through the 40R program and with Harbor Light Homes. That was a specific process that we really wanted to encourage that type of housing. I see Lorinda working her way down here. My personal opinion is that it's a positive impact on the school community, and particularly for children. And similar to what Sean said, having a diverse population of children in the school system, whether it be income or race or ethnicity or other upbringing, is only a benefit to the school community and the children that go there.
Thank you. Similar to Sean's answer about the rotation in a community, I think. Lorinda is not on this committee, but she does have a microphone. So I will tell you, Lorinda Visnick is on the school committee, Ward 6, good friend of mine, but she wasn't always a good friend of mine. She wasn't an opponent of mine. You can clap. Go ahead, you clap for her. But I didn't know Lorinda until the mayor, who was on video, bless his heart, earlier. When we were trying to permit Anchor Point, the mayor said, the chair of FF&E is Lorinda Visnick. Do you know her? I said, is that the woman with the tail in the back, that one? And he said, yeah. I said, no, I don't know her. So we met at the Atomic. And it swung away maybe he wasn't expecting, and we've been buddies ever since. And she was a major champion of the zoning for Anchor Point, and one of the major reasons why it passed the process. But maybe you want to answer the question about the quality of schools as it relates to affordability.
I would love to answer that question. So I think that I haven't met you before, but did you say you're a school teacher?
I am.
Well, first thing, God bless you. All right, there's a special place in heaven for school teachers, and I heard you say that you yourself would qualify for affordable housing. And so the way I like to think about it is, I want everybody to look at this young man and project. Do you think his child would be a problem in your school? Because when we personalize it, that's when it makes a real difference. When we talk about, now you're talking about my child. All right, my child is not going to be a problem in your school district. I'm a school teacher, right? I'm your local firefighter. I'm the person who, Andrew likes to say, pours your beer when you go down the street to have a drink. And so I don't believe that any kind of housing changes or negatively affects our schools. And if anything, quite the chatter right now is that several of our surrounding districts have such a declining enrollment in their schools that they're struggling to keep their schools open. Mm-hmm. So in general, the way schools are funded is possibly more complicated than the way affordable housing is funded. And the state gives you a certain amount of money per child in your school district. And if you are, is it Ipswich right now? Mm-hmm. If you are Ipswich, you are struggling because you're getting hardly any state dollars because you don't have enough children in your schools. And now what are you going to do? And what's your home value going to do when you don't have a local school? And you, my friend, come from a community that has a joint school, right? Hamilton-Wynnum, because neither community has enough children to hold a single school system open, so they've combined. Same thing with Boxford and the Masco School District. So there's a lot of pieces there, but my answer will always go back to that person, right? And this ideal of stop thinking, as you mentioned earlier, stop thinking of whatever is your terrible stereotype in your head about Section 8 vouchers and crime, and think about this young man and the fact that he's doing a service. He's teaching your children, and yet he can't afford to live somewhere close by.
Thank you, Lorinda. Lorinda Visnick, everyone. Special guest star, unplanned.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was. I'll just add briefly to that, to the personalizing it. We had, and Andrew was at this meeting years ago when we were talking about the project in Hamilton that didn't work out. And I shared this with a few people earlier. I was at this meeting, we had MAPC, which is a state organization, in DHCD at the time, which is now, and I'm going to forget the name.
HLC.
And they came and we asked them to come and put on a 40B kind of a seminar information for our townspeople. And it, frankly, it was a hostile environment. People had a lot of stereotypes and they believed they were true. After the meeting, one of the abutters came up to me and they said, well, how do you feel about this project happening in our town? It's going to bring in drug users, and these people don't have cars, et cetera, et cetera. And I looked at the person and I said, well, I'm a public school teacher, and I grew up with a single mother who would have qualified for this housing, and I'm the chair of the select board at the moment. So how do you think I feel about it? I think I've done an okay job. So I don't think these people coming to your community, put a personal note on it, are going to be this type of person that you're stereotyping. They're going to be upstanding citizens in the community and add to it.
Appreciate that, John. Megan, did you want to whack at that one, or you're okay? School systems? You want to whack at that question, or you feel good where you are?
I would just echo, I think it was Lorinda's point around declining enrollment in many of our communities, and I think it's something that we need to be aware of. We need to build family housing in many of our communities because declining enrollment is a concern, and so that is something that we need to address. Absolutely.
Thank you, appreciate that. And it's good to know, related to the earlier point about segregation and exclusionary zoning, you know, when we go to build something somewhere, you often get questions about schools. There's often commentary about special needs, and there's often a very overt, or it gets less overt over time, or more overt over time, questions about kids of color and issues of race and who's going to be a student in the school with my kids, almost every single time. So something to consider. All right, a couple more, and then we're going to take some questions from you all. Darlene, I'm sure this is one of your favorites right now. Can you explain to everyone what is an ADU? ADU.
I can't say no. No.
You could, if you want to.
She has no idea.
So accessory dwelling unit, ADU, we use a lot of acronyms in this field, in this industry. But it stands for accessory dwelling unit. City of Beverly just passed a new ordinance allowing accessory dwelling units. So it's essentially, thank you everyone here who helped. It's a secondary dwelling unit within the same parcel or property that can be used to create an additional housing unit. It could be within the building, an attached new addition, or a detached garage, or above a carriage house, any type of form. Generally, and the way our ordinance is written, it's smaller than the primary house, and tends to be what I say is more naturally affordable, sort of just, you know, smaller unit that's more suitable for a single person or a small household, or perhaps a senior or a senior couple. One of the main advantages and the reasons that we really, there are kind of three kind of categories of benefits, but one of them was what we talked about before in the aging senior population, and a lot of people who own homes, maybe they're paid off, but they can't afford their increasing tax burden. They want to stay in their home, but it's too big for them, so maybe they will convert part of their house to an accessory dwelling unit, or build up a new unit, which does have a cost, but then be able to move into that unit or stay in the primary home and rent out a smaller unit to a single person or a small household. You know, we have a lot of college students or recent graduates around here. I will note that that population, just on a side note, in the state of Massachusetts is leaving Massachusetts in droves, and it's a significant risk to our competitive advantage in our economy to be losing that population. And so accessory dwelling is just another type of way of creating affordable housing. It's not a guarantee that it's affordable. In Beverly, we didn't put an affordable housing restriction on it, but they tend to be smaller units that are more suitable for those families that are looking to build equity, move up, kind of increase their, find a place that's more permanent. So the other kind of two benefits are low impact on the environment. You're not, you know, clear cutting forest to create a number of housing units, low impact on the neighborhood. You're adding kind of one small unit to an existing lot. And frankly, just provides additional options and other ways of getting and cracking that affordable housing nut through the community.
Thanks, Darlene. Some difficult stuff there. Some of the mechanisms many of you are probably involved with trying to create in your communities, ADUs, inclusionary zoning, sort of any port in the storm as we're trying to figure out how to crack this. We have a couple of minutes left here, so I'm going to ask each of the panelists this final question, and then I believe we've been allotted another few minutes for questions from you all. So as a closer, though I'm pretty sure I know what they're all going to say, we'll start with Sean and come this way. Is affordable housing good for neighborhoods and communities?
Again, short answer, yes. I think it's mentioned before, we're talking about diversity and what a wonderful thing it is. And the many different types of diversity that it brings in are really profound. Different cultures, different races, different economics, everything just adds to a community. Many times when people come into a community, they get vested in that community. And that's really what we want in our communities, are people that live within our community that are vested in it, that care about it, that want to participate. Many of your local government people are either volunteers or even elected officials. They feel passionately about it, that they want to participate and help make a change or keep things nice as they are in our communities. So
I'm going to change your question a little bit.
Please.
So I think one of the questions that was on the flyer was something about who does affordable housing benefit? And I was thinking about that question. I was standing in line at CVS in Ipswich. I don't know if anybody here is from Ipswich, but if anybody is, you know that line at CVS in Ipswich, you stand there for about an hour because CVS in Ipswich is short-staffed like you cannot believe because they cannot hire enough pharmacy techs to save their lives. So it's an hour-long wait every time that you're there. And so I was talking to this woman named Barbara. She's probably in her 60s, wealthy, I'm assuming, by the way she was dressed, lovely lady, sitting there chatting with her for a while. And, she was complaining about the wait. And I was thinking about, so we got to chatting about my work and habitat and affordable housing, and she had some opinions. And so I was thinking about how affordable housing would benefit Barbara. Because Barbara is sitting waiting in CVS in Ipswich for 45 minutes because CVS in Ipswich can't hire enough staff because no one can live in Ipswich and afford to pay the rents. And not only that, but while I'm sitting there chatting with Barbara, she's telling me how her kids and her grandkids have had to leave the state because they can't afford to buy a house in the community. And she misses her kids and her grandkids so much. And she really wishes that they could stay nearby, but they can't afford to live here. And Barbara owns her own house, and she loves her house in Ipswich. And I'm thinking, she's opposed to affordable housing, but yet she has no idea how much good affordable housing would do for her. So I want you to think about, when you think about who affordable housing serves, it serves all of us. It serves everybody in the community. So I know that wasn't the question that you asked.
I played.
But
it's a ripple effect, right?
that's the question I wanted to answer.
That's a great question. I admire the political maneuvering. Very well done. All right, Darlene, you're the closer.
I don't know if I can follow that up. But it did, both Sean and Megan hit on a couple of the points, and I recently emailed a constituent with something similar to what are the benefits and why is it good to have affordable housing in our community? And it's because just increasing the number of housing units generally helps the supply and price issue. It moderates it. It increases the number of people that we interact with from a day-to-day basis. We get to meet people that maybe we wouldn't really know, where there's no, it's just a benefit to have a wide, diverse, and expansive community. But I was going to really hit on, too, that economic part of it and thinking of it more from my, technical brain piece of it. We have companies that want to locate here, but they grow here, and they can't because they can't they're not sure their staff will be able to afford to live here. And it's a question that we get all the time. If we, move from Cambridge to Beverly, where are people going to live? Okay, that's fine. That's a little bit easy because we can say, well, it's cheaper here, slightly. But if we're talking about moving out from outside of Massachusetts, maybe we should move somewhere else, like North Carolina or Texas, or, we're going to be able to find more employees there who can afford to live. And that is, may seem like that just impacts that business, but it is really detrimental to the entire community and our ability to really grow and thrive and provide all the wonderful benefits that we enjoy as a community. And I guess I would end it on like another real hit note too. We get this question a lot about just building generally housing downtown. And my argument is, well, do you like going to the restaurants that are downtown? Do you like going to the Cabot? Because if we didn't have people moving into our community, we wouldn't have these wonderful resources and things to enjoy. And I think it doesn't matter if, what their incomes are, they're still wanting to enjoy the community and be out, participating in the community. All of these people contribute to our life and our livelihoods and the enjoyment that we have. And everybody is entitled to live in our community and enjoy it as much as we do.
Well, thank you, Darlene. I appreciate that. Feel free. Okay, we're going to check and see about baby status. Everything is fine. There is no baby. Okay, not yet. So I can still keep talking to you. There's no baby coming yet. Of course, I would not be here.
She's also at a meeting?
She is also at a meeting. She's at the meeting Lorenda's in. Am I wrong? Oh, the meeting was over. Okay, I like my version of the story better. So everybody go with that. Lorinda is a truant and is not in the meeting, so you can tell her later. We do have some time because we are crushing it for our timeliness. So we do have some time for questions. I'm not sure. Oh, there's the mic right there. If you have a question, do you want them to wave? And then you can ask, and we'll get one of our esteemed panelists to give you a response at least. Thank you.
What are the things that the communities need to do now in order to allow you to create more affordable housing?
Excellent question. Everybody got that, I think. So let's try, I think because they're at the municipal level, we'll go Darlene and then Sean, because you guys are at the mechanics level of what's happening. What are the things the communities need to do now to allow for the creation of more affordable housing?
Well, from a perspective of just thinking of people who are here, one of the things I always say is come out to meetings. Anybody should come out. I never tell anybody, but particularly if you're a supporter of affordable housing. We'd love to have you at meetings and or submitting letters or speaking in favor of projects that create affordable housing. Oftentimes we hear from the people who are opposed, and sometimes those are fruitful conversations and we can educate, but it's great to have other points of view, and particularly people who understand the benefits of affordable housing participating in our public meetings. And that can be hard. Letters are great too. Phone calls are wonderful as well. And there are, I was trying to pull up quickly the tools that we had. We did a community housing plan in 2017. We did a master plan in 2020. Finished up in 2020, and all of these things have certain strategies to create affordable housing. The city of Beverly has recently changed our inclusionary housing ordinance to require a greater level of affordability, both number of units and a lower affordability percentage, so the 60% rather than 80% of area median income. We just passed the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. Next on our list, I don't know, I haven't figured that out yet. I'm still still trying to roll out the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, but there are, I think largely having voices that support and talk about and have conversations about affordable housing with your community members and your peers is really going to go a long way.
Excellent. Sean, how about you? I wonder if you're going to touch on 3A at all. And
yeah, I can touch on many things, I guess. In one word, I would say participate, and two more, pay attention. In many communities around, they'll have a master plan or a housing production plan. See what your communities is and see how they're doing on it. Hamilton's plan for our housing production plan is 14 units a year. We haven't met that. And if people show up to meetings and really encourage the select boards and planning boards and ZBA zoning boards to get to that point, that's going to put pressure on your local municipality to really think about affordable housing. Also, the state is just, I'm going to forget the word here, but it's not required, but it's heavily requested, recommended, the 3A zoning, which is in Hamilton, Wenham, in many communities that have an MBTA line. Within a half-mile radius of that station, they're pushing for housing in particular. Hamilton in particular, I think it's, in many communities, it's 15 units per acre. In Hamilton alone, that's about 730 units within our downtown area. And the state is asking us to get this done basically for the springtime for town meeting to pass. I'm an advocate, but I'm having trouble kind of swallowing this. It's more of a sledgehammer than an incentive program. So we're trying to work with the state to do some different zoning in our downtown area. We are instituting the 3A zoning, but we're also looking at the zoning called form-based zoning in our downtown area. And it's a by right, and it allows our planning board to kind of preemptively plan what the buildings and setbacks and foliage and sidewalks and all that stuff look like, so it will please the community. But what's in those buildings and stuff can be many different things. It can be housing, it can be stores, it can be et cetera. But we're trying to make it palatable for the community, and a lot of people are really scared of that big number, 730 units in our little downtown area. So there's kind of a balance we're looking for. And as far as other ways to increase affordable housing in your community, I would say show up to meetings, as was mentioned before. There was another point I was going to say about, maybe I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay, that's
Blanked on it.
two on the board for, we'll think about it later. Other questions that you remember? All right, okay, I won't bring it up again.
Okay, I'm going to speak to the rental side of affordable housing. My husband and I own a 3-family in Beverly. We were renting. When the house went up for sale, we bought the house. Being tenants our entire lives, we have tried to keep the rents affordable. Our 3 units are 2 bedrooms each. They are between $400 and $700 under market. I'd like to know why someone like us can't get a tax break because we are making an honest, hard effort to keep our units affordable. This is a sort of a multi-point. I'm a little concerned about the ADUs because if it works, and I want it to work, and I so want it to work, landlords, you will get new landlords who don't know how to be good landlords. We have joined Mass Landlords, which is an education group for landlords that teach you how to be good landlords and how to do it correctly and legally. And I just want to make you aware of that association. It's called masslandlords.net. So if you're able to inform other landlords about this association, it would be very helpful. But thank you. And so I think 75% of the rental units in the state are small mom and pop landlords like us, and there's no communication between people who are trying to keep affordable housing or build affordable housing and the landlords who actually provide, in a small way, that affordable housing. So why is there no program for us to stay in touch with you and help you understand what's going on with the people that we rent to and their lives and how they're helping the community? And I think I'll leave it at that.
That's good questions. Do you want to take that?
I would just ask you to reach out to me. I would love to have a meeting with you. I think that Mass Landlords would be a good information to put on our information that we're preparing for the ADU rollout piece of it too. I think that'd be good information to have, and I would appreciate having a further conversation with you. I don't have an answer as to the tax break piece of it. It's not something we've looked at. But, thinking about other ways, that we can have that conversation. I'm kind of open to trying to explore that question a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a good idea and a good question. Just a quick response to that is there's been discussion about whether or not a municipality could do exactly what you're describing, and how it would be structured. And so usually where you see it get a little challenging is a municipality's willingness to essentially instigate such a provision, create such a provision, and then the owners generally would have to restrict formally on the deed through a recording, usually an affordable housing restriction, what the rent levels could be. And sometimes that makes the landlords uncomfortable because it actually does, in a very real way, limit their income potential, but that would be the other side of this. So I think it's possible personally, and it has been discussed a number of times, but it would be pretty bold, and it's something you may want to consider asking more about to see if it could be done.
Hi. One of the biggest concerns I have around the North Shore is that many communities have opted to get more open space, through various, whether it's Mass Audubon or some of the other the trustees of reservation. Many of these groups are very involved, like Moraine Farm is a good example. And every time that happens, the environmental groups convince people, oh, this is such a good public good. Well, these environmental groups are hurting your efforts. These environmental groups and other do-gooders are hurting your efforts to promote housing. What do you have to say about that?
It's a good question. I did not.
Well, to use that example specifically, we never. You can have both, right? I think that's the goal. We have set. Our policy is to try to build housing in ways that we're not impacting open spaces and natural landscapes that already exists, and not removing tree coverage. We'd rather see, so we're very much pro kind of transit-oriented development in the city. Our master plan aligns with that perspective. Rehabbing, renovating, building new on vacant, building up where the infrastructure already exists, whether it's roads, water, sewer, but also built land or paved land, rather than single-family subdivisions that result in tree and deforestation. So I think we can have affordable housing, and we can have open space, and we need to have these valuable open spaces in order to have a really lovely community that we have. It was, the city's decision to invest in Moraine Farm and also Camp Paradise was not in conflict with any of our policies or decisions related to creation of housing or affordable housing, because we never intended to build housing or allow housing to be built on those properties.
Sean, you have a lot of green space.
The wheels are kind of turning in my head. We've had a lucky opportunity in Hamilton with a few homeowners, or landowners, I should say, that have larger properties that have had some forethought to think about conserving their land and also donating some of it for affordable housing. As Andrew's working on a project in our town now, or about to, we have a landowner that has kind of looked forward at affordable housing, the need for it in the community and Massachusetts at large, and he's taken that step. So I would say encourage your local boards and committees, and if you know a landowner that has a large property and he's thinking about doing something with it, encourage him to think about affordable housing and conservation at the same time. Cluster housing, cottage housing, is kind of a buzzword. It's very big on the West Coast, and it's trickling towards the East Coast now, where you have a kind of a denser cottage-style development of housing, and then you have open space, and that's a really great balance. It really builds a good community and a good feeling within that neighborhood. And a lot of the abutters who are worried about a big, cinder block affordable housing building it's a much more palatable thing for them. I would also say my thing I thought about earlier, or I forgot about earlier, was also many communities have adopted the Community Preservation Act. And if your community hasn't done it, I would encourage them to look into it, because in Hamilton and other communities, we use our community preservation funds, which is 2% on our tax rolls. Some communities do 3%, some do 1%. You can really pick your own percentage. But that money is matched a certain percentage by the state, and oftentimes our Affordable Housing Trust will come to the Community Preservation Group and ask for money, and we give them the money to create affordable housing in our community, or buy land or subsidize it, which in the case of Andrew, he's going to be asking us for $1 million here at town meeting.
Yeah, at least.
And so we are granting that money, and it's really nice because the communities put in money, but also the state is putting some of that money in as well. So it's not that tough of a burden to bear.
That's great. Megan,
Sorry, Sean, you don't have to go far. Beverly has a cluster zoning ordinance for open space. So if you do look at, I would certainly work with your planning staff.
Just one thought on that. I think where you see the most land gobbled up is sort of the $1 million single-family, 2-acre kind of houses that really are zoning in many of our communities required for the past 30 years. And so it's not affordable housing that's gobbling up huge acres of land. So affordable housing in many cases is built much more densely and is a much better use of small properties and can be a really good solution.
Yeah, also a good solution to water consumption, which is a concern in a lot of the communities that are concerned about open space. We probably have a couple more minutes for questions. I see one back here, one up here. I don't know where our microphone went.
Right here.
Oh, well, that's where it is.
Yeah. So I have a few questions for Andrew in terms of the financing model. I noticed in your portfolio you've got a number of smaller projects, meaning under 30 units. You've got one that's 20, one that's 24, and I'm interested in how the financing works for those units. I'm in a community where we've had a lot of discussion about potential smaller, under 30 units, and we get the impression, or we're told, that it's very, very extremely difficult to get financing for anything less than 40 units. And also, I'm interested in your financing for the joint projects with housing authorities, which you have a number of those as well. So are you going through the standard one-stop process, and are they funding the majority of these, the smaller projects for you?
Good questions. I see you dropping the one-stop language. That was pretty cool. So we'll clarify what that is. To your original question, though, I would say that financing generally goes badly. So you're right that anything under, you can do some projects that are smaller. There's only really 2 ways to do that. In my experience, this is on the rental side outside of Habitat, which is great for infill, smaller scale home ownership, really the best model. And there really are 2 ways that you can do that. One is the state has a community scale housing initiative that is not very heavily utilized for the reasons you described. It's very difficult economically to do something small. We did one in Beverly, just off of Rantoul Street, a 6-unit rental deal, which turned out great, but it's essentially the amount of effort that you have to put into something like that is not different than so much than doing 60, and it is difficult to finance. So that is hard. You can also do a supportive housing deal, which is Harbor Lighthouse. Bob Stoneham was here earlier. There he is in the back. Harbor Lighthouse Champion, which is a gem in the state, a 30-unit deal up the street for seniors. And we did, as you mentioned, we just finished one in Rockport that was 23 units, both seniors and families. Great project, but very difficult. So I would say those are the 2 ways to do it. If you do a supportive housing deal, it's for a particular population that has needs in addition to the economic vulnerability, or through the community scale initiative. And those 2 programs can do, say 20 to 30 units for the supportive housing and maybe less than 10 for the community scale. But it's hard to find people to do them and ability to do them because it's difficult to do. The other thing I will say lately is because the cost of land and construction are so significant and the interest rates, what we're finding, we're doing a project in Rowley now that's about 25 units, mixed project, seniors, adults with developmental delays. Really cool project. But because the infrastructure limitations, as was Darlene mentioned earlier, we have to deal with Department of Transportation because of it's right off of Route 1, and also serious water drainage and other issues. They can be done, but it ends up being wildly expensive per unit. And so when we end up at the state to say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost per unit, even though it's possible, they don't look well upon it because it costs. So the smaller it is, it's sort of like buying a quart of milk at 7-Eleven versus a gallon of milk at Market Basket. You can do it, but you're going to pay a lot more per ounce. So it is doable. I think you asked me something else other than is it hard to finance? Oh, one stop for housing authorities. Yeah, so housing authorities Massachusetts is one of the only states in the country that has state-funded public housing. Right, so people understand there's public housing, which we're not really making any more of, and there's affordable housing, which can be public housing, or it can be the other stuff we described. Public housing that's state funded would be like Enon Village in Wenham, for example, for folks who are in that vicinity, and that housing has really it's older. A lot of it is not doing well physically, and the state doesn't have really great solutions for helping to invest capital to upgrade it. So what they are doing sort of brilliantly now is encouraging housing authorities to redevelop their sites in partnership with somebody else. So we're doing a joint venture in Ipswich right now off of 1A, right across from True North Brewery, to renovate about 94 apartments, and that process didn't use the one-stop. The one-stop is the process that the state, it's what the state does once a year when you apply and ask for money. That's generally the one-stop. This one didn't go through the one-stop, but it could. Really what we're seeing is that the state is encouraging the housing authorities to explore other ways to refinance, including adding more density to their sites, and they're creating mechanisms, including in the current housing bond bill, for those of you who may be talking to your representatives, in the bond bill to create more funding and more capital for those housing authorities. So we're going to bid very soon on essentially the state public housing in Marblehead is trying to do this same thing. Manchester has explored it. A variety of communities are trying to figure it out because there's not a sustainable path to continue to operate them well. So that's a long answer to a short question. Small is difficult. Public housing authorities, yes, but they're going to need more capital, but it is possible. We got about 8:20, so I think we probably could do one more. Is that, I don't know where Therese is. There she is. One more is okay? Okay. So we have somebody up here, somebody in the back. Oh, there we go. Go ahead.
Briefly first, I want to endorse the concept of trying to work out something with individual landlords that create affordable housing locally. We have a now 31-year-old daughter who's a preschool teacher at the Y, as Andrew knows, and a couple years ago dearly wanted to get out of the house, and we almost as dearly wanted to get out of the house. And we looked at some of the new units on Rantoul Street, $2,400 for a very compact studio. Fortunately, we connected through our network with a person who owns actually 2 rental properties here in Beverly. One of them's owner-occupied, and for $700 less, she now has a very spacious 3.5-room apartment. And I think we need to encourage much more of that for all the reasons that you're talking about too, keeping the people that we need to keep our communities functioning and vibrant in our communities. But my question is, and I arrived a few minutes late, so you may have touched on this already, but the governor has proposed a major piece of legislation that will have a big impact on housing, the Affordable Homes Act. And if you haven't talked about it, could you just highlight why that's important?
Yeah, I can't see him, but that sounded eerily like Paul Anzikos, so I'm going to guess that's who it was. Anybody wants to? You take it. Okay. So this is what we were mentioning earlier. The governor has essentially come forward with, it's very interesting, that the housing bond bill, which has both funding in it, as I was describing earlier, for the public housing, but also has about 25 policy provisions, really gutsy. unusual to combine a budget item, meaning here's all the money, and by the way, it was $4.1 billion, I believe, with here's a bunch of policies that we want to see supported. We've never really seen something quite that gutsy would be the word I would use again. Really, really quite something. So tomorrow, the Joint Housing Committee at the State House is having testimony on it, so we'll be there tomorrow to testify in favor. It is incredible in that it provides a whole bunch of provisions that are going to help things like public housing, affordable housing creation, modernization, a variety of energy upgrades for existing and new affordable housing, as well as a lot of capital to get things built. So it is a pretty incredible response to the housing crisis. Of course, our own North Shore Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll is, I think, has probably a lot to do with that process as a housing champion. But if it passes, it will be the most robust piece of legislation around supporting affordable housing in terms of funding and policy that we've seen in a long time. So that on the heels of the MBTA zoning, which is going to create more physical space, which to be fair was the previous administration. It's really quite, two of those back-to-back administrations, it's the most robust stuff we've seen in, more than a generation. So go ahead, Sean.
And I would add to, since this is, it's ongoing, I would encourage you to call your local state rep and senator and encourage them to move it forward. I think the number, they're looking to create 200,000 or so units over the next 10 years, a certain percentage, I think 40% affordable, and then it kind of tiers down with some different 80% AMI, I think for 40, and then 25% for 30 or something like that. But it's really a worthwhile thing, so please reach out to your local reps. You can go, they have a website that's great. I can't remember who runs it, but I'm sure if you Googled it, you could find it. They give you speeches and letters and talking points and stuff like that you can send to your reps.
Yeah, I would encourage, if you have any questions about that, please, you can ask us in the back if you'd like. We'll help you make contact with who your rep or senator is. But a lot of that has to do with the competitiveness that Megan mentioned earlier, which is this is partially a response. There's been a sea change in the last, say, 5 years to employers really struggling economically to hire. And so the constituency of supporters is different than it used to be. There are other people than just folks like us. So
yeah, we're in a housing crisis, not just for affordable, for every form of housing, really.
We are a couple of minutes before 8:30, which I understand was the lockdown. Is that, I see somebody right there. Therese, where are you for, can we do another one? Is somebody here? No, we're done? She's right there. Okay.
We're going to pull the plug on it.
Well, if I can add to it just a second before everyone claps us out here. Tomorrow night at the Hamilton Wenham Public Library, there's another forum very much like this, I should say exactly the same but totally different. We've invited some state reps and et cetera. We have a person from our Affordable Housing Trust is going to be there. So if you feel the need to talk more affordable housing tomorrow night in Hamilton, please show up at 6:30 at the library. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Sean and Megan, Darlene and Andrew. This has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you to the Cabot for letting us host here. And have a wonderful evening. Please contact these organizations and see how you can get involved and help. Thank you. All right. Hey.
Thank you, everyone.